One of the things that's still uncertain about COVID-19 is how long immunity lasts. That information is important for vaccines, but also because it could help scientists figure out when people can become reinfected. Immunologists believe the percentage of reinfections is low, but knowing how many there are could be important as the world looks to reopen.
Broadly, a reinfection is when you get sick from the disease twice. But for COVID, it's actually very difficult to prove because some people can be testing positive a long time after they first got sick. So the technical definition for COVID-19 is if you get a reinfection, that means you got sick twice, but with two genetically different strains of the virus. So to actually prove it, the viruses need to be genetically sequenced each time so that the doctors can see that you were infected twice for real and not just testing positive from their first illness a couple months later. So there isn't much being done to track COVID reinfection, particularly in the US. Without actually doing the sequencing, it's impossible to know how many reinfections are happening. We don't have a lot of resources for genetic sequencing. A lot of the doctors and hospitals are really overwhelmed trying to take care of sick people, and they're not really taking the time to do genetic sequencing. Some hospitals don't even have the capabilities for it. And even if a doctor does do the sequencing and says, oh, this is actually a reinfection, there's no one to report it to. There's no central database of COVID-19 reinfections yet. Some countries are doing a lot better than us. Countries like Australia and Thailand are sequencing a lot of their cases. But even then, reinfection isn't a metric that's being tracked very much right now.
And that's a problem. It deprives scientists of real-world examples of how long immunity lasts, examples that could help with the problem of newer, more contagious variants.
We don't know if people who are getting reinfected with these new variants or not. And some of these variants are more contagious and potentially even more deadly. And so it's really important that we keep track of these variants. And without keeping track of reinfections, we're not doing all we can to really make sure we're capturing all these variants. And we know that some of the vaccines are less effective against some of these variants too. So it's really important that we know how many cases are actually occurring because of these new variants. I think one thing that's important to note is that there have been thousands of reinfections, but the number of reinfections is still very small compared to the number of new coronavirus infections. So I think the most important thing is stopping new coronavirus infections, because if you never get it, you can never be reinfected.